people.
Well, we can bring up the specific example.
Well, I mean, the recent example in the spiritual community is the kind of laughable clips going around of Aubrey Marcus saying that the divine feminine spirit Isis spoke to him, and in this divine download that he received on his 699th ayahuasca ceremony, that he was told to go on Raya to find another beautiful woman, that he has been the chosen one, that he must impregnate 2 of these ladies. And that was, that was spoken. And you maybe think when you hear something like that, the God that was speaking to him might just be his dick, that he has become to believe that he's so tapped in. And again, to Aubrey, I think he's done an enormous amount of good, mostly. He's lots of good for a lot of people.
Man, for sure.
But maybe it just goes a step too far sometimes, and I don't think when he put that out, it was received remotely like he thought it was going to be received. I think he thought people were going to be like, wow, you're so evolved, Aubrey, this is amazing. But most people see it for what it is this time, and it was like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
What are you doing, bro?
Yeah. I saw the clip, and I thought, and the clip I saw was a pretty ingenious skit that was kind of created. This guy, Nick.
I know the one.
Nick Sway. And he was like the Department of Elimination of Organic.
Yeah.
It was pretty genius. And it's like basically this demonic force like whispering into Aubrey's ear, like, yeah, you think this is God.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I have a ton of respect for Aubrey and everything he's done. I mean, early on in my journey, I was all about all his podcasts until, he started talking about some of the really heavy polygamy stuff and polyamory stuff. And I was like, I don't, it just doesn't resonate with me, like being in a room and listening to your wife get fucked by some guy in the other room and you're battling those demons. I'm like, what are we doing here, dude?
Yeah.
Like, is that actually fruitful in your spiritual growth? I'm not sure. And so I kind of got tuned out of it. And then I've kind of like through the grapevine, watched the journey of like coming out of polyamory and going into monogamy, or what he calls does he call it radical monogamy, or what is this term?
They just invented this term because Aubrey was famously very much about that lifestyle, and even somewhat the cult of the Onnit tribe a little bit. A lot of them tried it, and a lot of them ended up saying actually the open relationship kind of thing was really, really difficult. Now they packaged it as spiritual evolution, right? Taught them to face their shadows. But even Aubrey, the king of the hill, was like, yeah, actually got what I needed from that, and now I'm entering into a beautiful relationship with my wife Vailana, and it's going to be monogamous, and we're going to do like the boring, good old-fashioned way of monogamy until
he got the download from ISIS.
He got the download from ISIS, which could be maybe just like some sexual diva. Like, I think most people would just be like more receptive to the message if he was like, I'm just a guy that likes to fuck, and that's why I probably went into there. But now I'm trying to package it as a divine download from God.
So that's really what I wanted to say, because I think it takes an immense amount of courage to get on a microphone and share your process.
No doubt.
Especially
with people you're intimate with and close with.
Yeah, and say things that come up in your psyche that you feel in your heart, and you're working on discerning God's voice, spirit, my own ego, my own shit, and you're putting that out there for the world. I think it takes an immense amount of courage and inner fortitude to do that. Then, though, my question becomes, the fact that you can't see this from another angle and go, okay, so Spirit is giving me a download to go and impregnate 2 women, outside of my marriage. Okay, maybe that's a download, but whether it is or it isn't doesn't really matter, because it's about his experience, But to share that and then think it's going to be received in a certain way and not realize like people are going to look at you like a total narcissistic maniac.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's true too. Certainly seems questionable that you would just start packaging that as spiritual evolution.
Right.
You know. So
while selling romantic relationship workshops, and I think that's why people also get a little bit more triggered by that stuff, is like, people were in the comments saying like, I was at your workshop last year where you were talking about ways to love in a monogamous relationship. Now all of this is going on, and what's the next grift essentially? Now what's the next sale of like, this is how you can become as enlightened as I am, because monogamy is only for the 3D people that don't get it. Now you need radical monogamy if you're truly going to ascend, and you can attend my workshop for $10,000 over the weekend if you want to come and do that. And I'll show you exactly how. It's kind of just like, it gives people the ick, for want of a better word.
Yeah. And so him just being a great example of, a lot of people are out. We live in an age of commercialization of spirituality and wellness.
Yeah.
You know, and so again, man, you cannot just decide that somebody is your idol and everything they say is gospel, because it's just, they're another human being.
Exactly.
You know, they're another person who's, you know, stumbling and bumbling their way through life in a human body. And, you know, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, you have to decide what's right for you. And you can't base that on what some talking head on Instagram is doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
No matter what it is. You know, I saw it and I laughed, and then I go through the comments, or I don't think he even had it posted, but he had posted all the names that people were calling him, and you know, how upsetting it was and all this. And it's like, dude, you had to see that coming, man.
Yeah.
If you're this, you know, if you're this aware, how do you not understand that this is going to be received in a certain way?
Yeah.
You know, it's, and again, more power to him for having the balls to say this stuff.
Right.
And talk about his process of what's going on inside of him, because I think that, to me, that's where the fruit lies of it, is when you take something that far, you expand the scope, the breadth of which people can start to observe their own internal mechanism more clearly, you know, and go, oh, okay, and allow for that. And then, you know, in my own experience, it's like, yeah, this thing requires discernment too.
Yes.
You know,
big time.
Of course, dude. I took evolutionary biology in college, one of my favorite classes of all time. Yeah, men are programmed physiologically, biologically to spread our seed. It's part of nature's process of proliferating the human race. But does that mean it's spiritually, it's a spiritually ascended position to take, to say I need to just impregnate as many women as possible?
Yeah.
Actually, not really.
No.
You know, not for me at least.
No.
You know,
you got to just call it what it is, and I think people would more respect that than the attempt to package it as something that is enlightened. And I think the reason that some people will get duped, by the way, some people have always been duped by people. They've ended up in cults. There's many documentaries where people will talk about how they got swept up in the feather of a cult, and it was amazing. And then only after they escaped were they like, oh yeah, wow, there were a lot of red flags. So like this discernment piece that you said is really important, because I think people can recognize whether they are being manipulated or grifted if they are in right relationship to themselves.
Yeah.
You know, there's this word that gets thrown around a lot called authenticity. Like, you can smell authenticity, but only if you are authentic within yourself.
100%.
Like, if you're lying to yourself, you are prone to be manipulated or lied to by people that are good at talking and saying the right set of words to cast the right spells. Because Aubrey's masterful at that. He's poetic. The words he uses all the right spiritual things. He looks the part. He wears the beads. He wears the cloaks. He says the right things. And the people that want so badly to belong to something, and they see the value in that, because there's good in the spiritual community, man. Again, there's good in what Aubrey's done. So they get suckered wholesale instead of being like, well, I've got this discernment to say that we can divorce the message from the messenger. Like Kanye West is a good example, because everyone's like, Kanye West has gone off the deep end. I'll still slap to some old Kanye West songs, man. They smack, but some people want to throw all the baby out with the bathwater because Kanye's a madman or whatever. But you don't need to love the artist to love the message, you know. And I think it's only if you have that discernment you can do that, and that's why it's dangerous. And I think that's why people are coming out in droves and pushing back on this a little bit, because they know there are some people that are going to get swept up in this. There are some people that are going to, you know, paint this community in a bad light, and it doesn't help our case to steel man that there is utility in alternative practices that are not mainstream Christianity, for example. There's immense value in certain plant medicines at the right time, but then people see it getting taken to extreme and they think, well, that's what that leads to. You guys go and enjoy your ayahuasca, and, you know, 2 years down the line, you're going to be trying to fuck everything and call it radical monogamy. It's like, no, maybe they just did too much. Maybe there's actually such a thing as too much plant medicine. Maybe when you've got the message, you can hang up the phone, as Terrence McKenna used to say.
Absolutely, man. You got to be willing to do that. You know, you've got to be willing to do that.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.